So are you going live or what?
We just went live, and that's exactly how we're opening this up, with Jim Bauer saying, "Are you going live?"
Are you live, everybody?
So we'd like to welcome everybody.
A word from our sponsor.
Snapple. Well, here's the other sponsor, just so that you know. Guinness in a Sam Adams mug. All right. So first, we'd like to welcome everybody to Shared Space, where we talk about anything that flies, anything that has to do with the national airspace. We don't care if it is the smallest nano drone that you can possibly imagine, all the way to something that we're launching into outer orbit, into space. So I'm one of your hosts. My name is Christina Ng. I'm the COO of UA Solutions Group.
Jim Bowers, Demon Seed, and founder-director of the Swarm Network, Search and Rescue Drones.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm Brian Sanders. I am the other co-host here with the wonderful Miss Christina Ng. I am the Vice President and Director of Customer Engagement at Homeland Surveillance Electronics, or HSE is where I'm more commonly known. Providing mostly industrial and military-grade drones to first responders and military and agriculture and a whole host of industries. So welcome to our first Google Hangout on air live, or whatever the official term is. So we're glad you're here. All right, Ms. Chrissy, shall we have you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we want to talk about tonight, which is why we have Jim Bowers on here, and there are kind of two things that we're going to talk about, and it's going to encompass all in all social media and how the internet and social media has played this huge role with the integration and the development of unmanned aircraft. And when I say integration, I mean getting them into the high schools, getting them into the commercial sector, just everything that unmanned aircraft or drones touch. So the first thing that we're going to sort of talk about is both Indiegogo and Kickstarter. We noticed that, Jim, you had a really great video about Dream hse-uav and their Plexi drone, and I think it was called "What's Really Going On with Plexi Drone?" So we know that Plexi drone is on an Indiegogo, which is similar to Kickstarter. And the big thing that we wanted to talk about also is, which is in the news, the Zano, Z-A-N-O drone, which recently filed bankruptcy. And Kickstarter was kind enough to hire a freelance reporter to go and investigate as to what actually happened. Zano had 12,075 backers when it closed down. If you go to Kickstarter, you can see these statistics. And it had $2,335,119 in its coffers. Now, Plexi drone currently has $2.2 million in backing.
Yes.
Take it away, Jim.
Dreamkey, they pronounce it Dreamkey. They're an interesting company. They're all very driven, very focused on putting out, a great product, but they're really starting to worry their backers, because it's been over a year and a half now, and here at CES, where all their backers thought they were going to unveil the prototype, they still had no drone to show, to say, this is what's coming, guys. So that freaked a lot of people out. So they're saying that they're going to ship by second quarter. Now, that probably means end of second quarter if they don't push it back again. And if they push it back again, God help them. I don't know what's going to happen, because it's going to be like rats jumping a burning ship. Their backers are just going to head for the exit doors.
So there have been some really successful campaigns on Kickstarter. The first one that we want to talk about is, who I love, is J.D. Claridge and Charles Manning of Xcraft. Now, their Kickstarter campaign with their X+1 raised $143,400 with 263 contributors. They moved that Kickstarter is very successful. We know, a lot of people know them from Shark Tank fame. They moved their phone drone Ethos over to the Indiegogo versus Kickstarter. And as of today, they have $354,996. Both of them have reached about 300% of their goals, and we know that the X+1 is being shipped. So the question is, what makes a company such as Xano and DreamQ, what is it,
DreamKey.
DreamKey, kind of fall down, whereas some of these other companies, such as with Charles Manning and J.D. Claridge of Xcraft, so successful? What do you attribute that to?
It's kind of a roll of the dice, really. They come up with these great ideas, and a lot of it is kind of the snake oil salesman. If the guy's really good at pitching his idea, like a great car salesman, they can get a lot of people on board to invest their money. And if they don't have the background in product engineering and development and software and all that sort of thing, or the know-how to go after that kind of thing, they can fail, and a lot of them have. Not to the extent that Zoom did, but I mean, they took a lot of people down. So, and that kind of started that wave of gun-shy, drone backers. The consumer wants to know before they invest.
Yeah, if you go to Kickstarter right now and you search drones, 337 projects come up, and these projects there's a lot. Some of them are making films, some of them are building unmanned aircraft or drones. So, but the question is, can we support 337 projects? And that's just on Kickstarter. If you go over to Indiegogo, it won't tell you how many actually come up when you search drones, but you can just keep searching page after page after page. And a majority of them over there on Indiegogo are for unmanned aircraft being built. And I was surprised that a majority of their funding was at zero. Brian, what do you think about that? You're a distributor of unmanned aircraft and you sell unmanned aircraft. How do you determine if you would back a company on, for instance, Indiegogo or Kickstarter and try to be one of their distributors versus going with a company such as Leptron that really bootstrap their operation before going to any sort of investors?
It's a really great question. So I think there's a couple points. In one of our previous podcasts, we talked about how much money's out there right now in VC funding, right?
Yeah.
It was, Chrissy, do you recall what the numbers were?
Oh, it was in unmanned aircraft alone. It was like 600 million, I think, was the number, or that was just the top 20. We have that. Those figures we can post.
And it didn't even include, a huge category of funds and investment in companies. I mean, the article was quite conservative in a sense of what's really out there being pumped into this industry. So obviously, I think there's some clear concerns in general, right, about how much capital is actually being infused into this industry and what can the actual demand really support today. Right, we all know there's a lot coming, and we talk about this almost on every single call or podcast or whatever we're doing, but we don't even know the tip of the iceberg of I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg for what this technology really makes possible, right? So I think that being said, can it really support this amount of capital infusion? So to your specific question, I guess that's one thing that we'll see, and I think to Jim's point earlier is that you're going to see a lot of folks perhaps kind of backing out or getting a little more gun shy as they're getting burnt with every brilliant idea that comes up, right? So I think that's one that's just investor, kind of investor knowledge, right, or investor insights. And that's a whole nother conversation we could spend a lot of time talking about, right? However, as it relates to us and our company, and going back to your original question, Chrissy, is, at HSE, we're really after supporting the demands and the needs of our clients, right? So more than anything, we're after finding out what solutions are out there and available in a manufacturer network, or if it's something that we have manufactured or whatever it is, right? But does that product, the end result product, does it fit what our customer needs? Is it the quality they expect? Is it the service after the fact, which is primarily handled by us, but we've seen a lot of companies kind of come and go with and without that, right? So, that being said, we could talk a lot about, kind of a temporary placeholder for, one day this aircraft is going to be here, right? So at some point we'll have this in 2 months or in 2 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
To us, we've been around long enough to where we know that until I can see it, until we can see it, until we can fly it, until our customers can see it. Otherwise, until then, it's a good idea as far as we're concerned. And I don't mean to sound cynical or but I think that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
I think that a lot of these decisions are based on features. When Plexidrone first unveiled their plan at the NAB Expo, I think, in Los Angeles, they were talking about obstacle avoidance, and that was cutting edge at the time. So flocked to it, and they got all these backers because they were going to have obstacle awareness. But Unique and everybody else is now coming to market with it. Plexidrone still hasn't produced a single drone. So what they had that was cutting edge is no longer there. But I do think that as we move along, that these Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaigns, people are going to be attracted to them based on what they're pitching. People are talking about LiDAR and infrared and all of these kind of features. So if somebody pops up with a new technology for the drone, that I think will attract a whole new set of buyers, consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point too. And I mean, I guess, Jim, that really kind of goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, right? Is that, until we can see it, right? Until it's here, it's a good idea. And I'm so cautious to say, because I don't want to sound like I don't support, or that we as a company don't support, all the innovation, all the brilliance, and all the intellect that's out there, because it's really exciting, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of brilliant ideas, and sometimes there's a long drive between a brilliant idea and having the skill, the ability, the capital, the resources, and a manpower, aspect, and many others, to actually be able to deliver and build that actual idea and make it real, right? So, to Chrissy's question originally, I think that's where we stand as a industrial UAV company. And to us, the other obvious concern is getting our customers all excited, right? Because when our customers are all excited, we're all excited, and we want to deliver what we promise to our customers, right? So then it gets to a point of, it's like, well, we were working with this company, and they were supposed to have this thing 3 years ago, and we don't have it, they don't have it, and
walk the walk if you can talk the talk.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. And I think that really, there's something really beautiful at this point in the industry, because there's so many, as I said, there's so many brilliant folks out there, right? A lot of people doing really exciting stuff in our industry. And that being said, I think there's also a lot of folks that are kind of new to maybe running a business or managing production or assembly or manufacturing, and kind of fill in the blank there, right? And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of folks to overcome. So I think that even as beautiful and as quickly as this industry is blossoming, I think there's still a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of newbies, right? A lot of folks that are pretty green to the business world, and I think that sometimes is a challenge too.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, they come up with these ideas for a drone, but like you said, they're just not savvy when it comes to, mass production. They've got to go and get the Chinese to make a body for them and a shell and mass produce the speed controls and find a supplier for the motors. And it's just not something you do overnight, You've got to have a pretty smart team in place.
Yeah, one of the things that
it's not just. Oh yeah, go ahead, Chrissy.
I would say one of the things that I found interesting on Kickstarter was Sci-Fi Works is up there, and that's Helen Greiner. Helen Greiner is one of the inventors of the Roomba with iRobot. So we even have people who have, have been very successful in industry before there was, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and these crowdfunding sites, who are now turning to them to help kickstart their campaigns. And Helen Greiner is not new to the business. She's maybe new to unmanned aircraft in the sense that, even though I think somebody told me once that she considers them flying robots, which is a great analogy from somebody who comes from the robotics world. But I was really surprised to find her on Kickstarter. I would have figured that she would have had access to the VCs in order for her to get the funding. But we go back to Xcraft and Charles Manning and J.D. Claridge, who said very specifically the reason that they went on Shark Tank was because they didn't want VC money. They wanted to reach out to investors who were going to put in some sweat equity on their own and were going to be an integral part of the company. Now, when you get onto Kickstarter, that's completely opposite, because it's just people funneling you money who aren't going to help you assemble it and research where do you need to get these parts from, and are you going to be able to have these parts for a long time. We've heard of instances where these drone manufacturers maybe have these brushless motors, and all of a sudden the supply chain to that brushless motor is gone, and now what are they going to do?
Right, and that happens a lot. We've worked with folks that's happened, in a number of cases where their actual supply chain management falls, right, and then we can't get our ESCs, or we can't get our motors, for example, right, or whoever it was that was building. I mean, you name it, you name the part, and you'll see times where that fails, right? And now all of a sudden the manufacturer, their distribution network, their dealer network, et cetera, is also trying to make good on all those orders to the customer. So, it's quick, as staggering as the demand is right now in our industry, it's almost like the cart before the horse in some ways, right? And we could probably talk about this part all night, and I know we have a lot of other topics we want to cover too. So let's bring a closure to this particular conversation so we can move on to our next topic.
Right. So before
what else do you guys want to say?
So real quick, before we go away on this one, I do want to mention on Indiegogo that the Gastonia, North Carolina Teen Drone Club is on there also. So remember that this is a great way for the traditional fundraising, these high school and middle school fundraising, instead of just going to your mom and dad and your family's, friends and everybody to try to get $5 to get something going. These guys, their quote was, "We would love to create a drone club for middle school and high school students." And I was really disappointed. Nobody had given into their fund, and their fund starts at $5. And that's less than 2 gallons of gas right now. $5 right now isn't a whole lot.
I know.
And, right? It's a fancy coffee.
You can register 25 drones for $5.
I know, right? And I thought to myself, you have free registration for your drone. Why don't you put that $5 to good? So I want to give a shout out to these Gastonia, North Carolina Teen Drone Club on Indiegogo. And this is really who we need to fund. And I understand that we have these unmanned aircraft manufacturers, and we have 370, and they're all fighting for a space. But I think that this is a cause that we can get behind, that is on these Kickstarters and this crowdsourcing funding, is don't just look at it for manufacturers. So that's one of the big things I wanted to throw out to those guys.
There is one little drone that I'm keeping a really close eye on. Well, actually two. The Lily, I think, is going to do really well, and that Onaga fly, or whatever it's called. From everything I've read, I got a feeling that those are going to be two pretty safe bets on the crowdfunding sites. But you never know.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Until we see it. That's right.
Yeah. So we're kind of talking about social media and how all of this is working and been such an integral part with unmanned aircraft. I don't think that unmanned aircraft would be where it's at today, especially with the DIY Facebook page and Swarm Network. Thank you, Jim, with Demons, with the Swarm Network and the search and rescue drones. SARdrones.org, if anybody's interested. I think that back in, we talk about RC hobbyists, and it used to be you had to go to your local mom and pop hobby shop, or you might have had a science teacher or a teacher at your local high school or somebody's mom or dad who was really into rocket building and this RC hobby arena, and that was how you learned about unmanned aircraft, and that was how you did all these little home builds out of balsa wood. Whereas today, with the proliferation of the internet and social media, especially Facebook and Twitter and meetup groups, unmanned aircraft have been able to basically just proliferate, and they're all over now. And my question for Jim is, we know when you were at CES 2016 that there were
16.
some things.
16?
2016, right?
Okay. Yep.
Or 50, yeah. So there was some stuff that went on with the Swarm network, right, on social media that you were taking care of. There you go. And unfortunately, it was negative, and I was sort of disappointed in the fact that here you have somebody who's really trying to help out, right? We're trying to do this search and rescue, and it's drones for goods, and we're really trying to help out. And when I read some of the posts and some of the comments towards you, they were really negative. And there have been other instances where people put out some information. You put out a great plug on your Facebook page about a 333 exemption for X price. We're not going to say anything because it is our competitors. But what happened was that thread turned in, it totally went off course, and it just took a totally different turn. And there were some really negative comments on there. One guy even said that he flies better than 99% of the manned aviators out there, so he should be able to be an unmanned aircraft pilot who can fly anywhere that he wants to, essentially. And my question to you is, well, first I said challenge accepted, right? So from a combat helicopter pilot, challenge accepted. That's not what I said on there. I try to be really nice. It was Jim's site, so I typed the emails and then I just kind of deleted them. We've all done that. So, yes. Or I'll type the email next time. I'll just send it to Brian for proofreading, and he'll send it back to me and say.
And I'll say no.
No.
I've changed it, and all I've replaced it with is thanks for your unsolicited feedback. That's it. That's all I would say. And you can post that.
Well, Swarm definitely has its share of dissenters, or some guys call them trolls.
So how do you take care of that? What is your recommendation to people who, the thing about it also is, I don't think that a majority of these people would say this to our faces if we saw them in a bar, right? Or if we saw them on the street. So what do you do and how do you stop that? Do you delete those posts? Do you try to curtail it? Or do you just kind of say, hey, it's social media, we're going to be social, and just kind of let it go and see what happens?
Yeah, well, I let, the only thing I will delete is a personal attack. If somebody stoops to saying, you're just a frickin' idiot or flabby-ass schmuck, then I'll delete those. But as long as they keep the conversation civil, I'll let them talk about whatever they want. They can put me down, they can put the network down, and here lately, we've got a few guys that, I mean, they're very, very intelligent. I won't name any names, but they're kind of against the Swarm network, and they're members. They're UAV pilots, volunteers, search and rescue, the whole bit. But every time we have a mission alert, I call it, when we get a call out to go out somewhere, they're throwing out all the reasons why we shouldn't get involved. But that's okay. As long as they're not out to destroy the network, then they can voice their opinion all they want. I'm okay.
That's it. You're better than me. No. Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I mean, Brian, you guys aren't on social media, so we're just learning. We're just learning him how to get on Twitter. We're learning him how to get on Twitter.
Here we go with the tweet attack. I can't even think of a good acronym right now for that, but I'll come up with one, I promise. So, here's let me think of how do I say this. So, we have a really wonderful presence and connection with a lot of really tremendous customers and old and new, right? And a variety of different market insights and customer input, right? Based on your small mom and pop local folks, the farmers or public municipalities, public utility companies, you name it, right? And one of the things that we love about such a diverse group of customers is that we hear a lot about what's working and what's not working for them in the field, right? And I think that one of the challenges that comes with social media is that sometimes it's also just a podium for people to just put their rants on, right? And they're trying, man, I don't know even what the intent is behind it, and it makes no difference for me to try to guess and figure it out, right? But I think that there's one thing that people overlook a lot of the time, and we talk a lot about this in our training. In fact, we should talk about where we are, by the way, and what we're doing, because I think that'll be fun for our viewers to know a little bit more about that part of our lives, too. But I'm currently in Perry, Florida. You didn't know where that was? I didn't either. No problem. Don't feel bad. It's a little tiny town in Florida, north by Tallahassee, a couple hours, and there's nothing here. Not really your destination town, okay? But I'm here training some of our customers on one of our industrial crop sprayers, large aircraft. And these guys have some really great experience already, right? They don't know this aircraft, and they don't know the application, right? So that's what we're going through. And in each of our trainings, we'll really do a lot of focus initially when we're setting up the class and the students for training. We'll talk about industry perception, right? Not only inside the industry, so those of our peers and competitors or business partners, but also public perception, knowing that there's a lot that's still coming in the regulatory framework. There's still a lot to have, to happen, but we're really responsible and tasked with how we're creating the public persona to see us, right? And how we work together. So one of the things I love about our little group here is shared space, right? Because really it's a shared space for all of us, not only from your long-term, lifelong RC guys and gals, but also a lot of people that are getting into the industry brand new. So I think that there's a responsibility to play nice and to play fair and to further the conversation and further the movement, right, in a way that's productive and beneficial for all of us. If you got a bunch of goofballs out there flying near JFK or Dulles or whatever, all the time, that's only going to damage and heighten regulations for the rest of us, right, whether it's hobby or whether it's industrial or et cetera. So I think those are all things that we need to really think about. We're on the ground floor creating a new face of a brand new industry, and there's a big responsibility that comes along with that. So I get people have their concerns. I get it, totally valid, no problem, but be responsible with how you're hey, listen to me saying what people should do. I think it'd be great if people were just responsible with how they communicated and follow it up with, this is what I think we should do to further the movement in the industry. This is a way that I think would really resolve the concerns with the 333 process, for example, or whatever it is. So soapbox here, I'm going to get off my soapbox, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that the positive criticism is something that we all need to think about, respect for one another. And like Jim said, they might say that, hey, you're whatever, X, Y, and Z. Well, tell me how to fix it. Give me a diet plan. Yep. Give me an exercise plan. Tell me about a place for, I don't know, hair for men, whatever. But you can't just say, this sucks and you suck and I can outfly 99 people, 99% of pilots. If you're going to say that, one, you have to back it up with statistical data from where I come from. And from the man side of the house, the thing that we focus on more than anything else, it isn't your flying skills. We say you can teach a monkey how to fly, right? So as far as the flying skills are concerned, in manned aviation, that's kind of the thing. You can teach a monkey to fly. But what you can't teach somebody is the ensure gets passed down into the unmanned aircraft side of the house. And I think one of the problems that I see on social media with unmanned aircraft, and here's my little soapbox, one of the things that I see a lot of times is it's negative towards the flying skills. Whereas in manned aviation, it would be negative towards your safety record. in unmanned aircraft, there's not a lot of talk in there about your SMS, your safety management system. There's not a lot of talk in there about the safety of what you're doing. And I think what I love about Jim Bowers with the Swarm Network is they are focused on safety. And they want to make sure that they're qualified, that these pilots are qualified, and that they're able to do what they're doing. But at the same time, just like in manned aviation, the pilot in command sometimes has to make that call where what you're doing trumps safety, because it's more important. It trumps, and that's the job of the pilot in command. So, Jim, where do you see that with this, with social media? And we're back with the Swarm Network a little bit, but how do you? That's another thing that you have to deal with. Is how do you say, hey, listen, we're in this together. At the end of the day, to possibly find a little girl out in the woods or find a kid out in the woods, and that trumps everything else.
That's right. I mean, I made that argument here a couple of weeks ago when I had a bunch of negative remarks about whether or not we should get involved. And I always err on the side of what can we do for the family? Even if we just show up and talk to them for a while and evaluate it, talk about their missing loved one, what their options are. Even if for some reason we can't fly, at least we got involved. To just treat these as, I've had guys before tell me, well, what's the point in going to search for that person? He's been missing for almost 4 weeks. He's obviously dead. And those kinds of assumptions just absolutely just push my buttons. I hate it because I want them to treat each one like they could potentially find this person alive. Who knows? You do not know. It's impossible to know. So you just have to go out there with an open mind and do your job and use your skills. And one of my recent pilots, I was telling him that even though we had 25 square miles of a search area, you can still sort of blend that down or whatever to priorities. We know where the victim parked his car. We know what direction he headed off to, so you can prioritize. Search those areas first and fan out from there. Don't let everything overwhelm you and call it a lost cause. This is a waste of time because this area might be so big. Search and rescues are never easy. I tell these guys all the time, if it was easy, they wouldn't need us. They'd already have found them.
Yeah, so I think that message on social media, and we from Shared Space will continue to make sure that we support that message in, the Drones for Good message, that, maybe you don't have this, $10,000 drone or $3,000 drone, or you show up with, a DJI Phantom when you said you're showing up with an S900. Right. If that DJI Phantom, even though that's not what you said you're going to show up with, if that can find somebody, or it can do just give comfort to the family, sure. I think that needs to, people need to understand that sometimes it's not.
We just had that happen. We had a pilot that was supposed to have a P3 Pro, and it broke down or something. So rather than just give up on it, he had an FC40. So he drove the 4 hours there and said, "Look, this is all I have." But he did everything right. He was professional. He had, his inverter and his spare batteries, and he contacted the SAR coordinator. He did everything right, except he didn't have a $1,500 or a $5,000 drone. He had a freaking FC40, probably one of the worst things you go searching for. But he had FPV, so there is a remote chance that he actually could have helped. And so that was his mission. He just decided to go and offer his help because that's all he could do. So I had to give him credit for that.
Yeah, and I was really surprised at all the negative comments on social media about that. And I think that we forget that we step back and that this person volunteered for this, their own time, their own money, their own resources. That's what we have to commend. And once again, I think, social media, there's this time and this place, and we understand this, but it's something that for the viewers listening to this, please be nice and put yourself in the other people's shoes and understand that, you know, they're doing the best that they can with what they've got.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. I think, you know, to also, you know, not overstep the significance and the seriousness of safety, right? There's kind of this interesting little mixture right now, right, of folks flying for fun, just for fun, and there are some incredible operators out there, some really talented folks out there, really are. And then there's the other side of the house that still includes those same very talented operators that are conducting work in commercial or search and rescue, whether you're getting paid or not, but conducting some a more formal task, right? Now, to what Chrissy said earlier about folks saying, "Oh, I'm better than 99% of the manned aviator pilots out there." Okay, that's a pretty what do I say? That's a big number. 99%. There's a lot of manned aviators out there. First off, okay. But second than that, okay, so you can fly faster. Like, okay, great. Well, if I'm, you know, a lot of the work that my customers do is not about flying fast. You know, it's just not. So there's I think more than anything, hopefully what we'll see in this evolution is that folks really start talking about the proficiency of whatever task they're doing. Now, I'm not a racer. I love watching those races on YouTube. Have you guys seen those by any chance?
Yeah, the FPVs.
Like the Coliseum. Oh my gosh! Yeah. First off, it makes me nauseous. I can only watch it for a little bit because I get so dizzy. But I've went to some of the races, and it's super exciting and it's crazy to watch, especially when I'm flying something that's, you know, 7 feet in diameter out there, and they're just as fascinated with our industrial stuff as I am with their little, you know, their little tiny thing that fits on a dinner plate. Yeah. But you know, I think more than anything, it's about, you know, having that transition for folks in the industrial industry that don't necessarily be, you know, not to be worried about how fast you can fly or how this or how that, or you being better than 99% of the folks out there. I think it's more about, can you accomplish a job and can you let safety rule over everything, right? So one thing that a lot of times not a lot of the times, one thing that our students hear a lot throughout our training is nothing over safety. That's kind of one of our lines, right? They'll hear all the time, nothing over safety. It's important to be efficient. It's important to get the job done. It's important to make sure that you capture the correct data. Like, no doubt about that. But as the FAA feels, and HSE very much backs that up, is nothing over safety. Nothing's more important than accomplishing whatever you're out to accomplish in a safe way for not only people on the ground, but also manned aviation in the sky and other aircraft, right? I mean, unmanned or manned. So I think that's a little bit lost right now because there's been such a hobby and a toy kind of mindset in this industry that it's like, oh, it's no big deal. You can just fly crazy near Dulles, for example, like I said earlier, you know, or near, you know, over that crowd of people. I can't tell you how many expos and events and conferences I've been to where people have flown and done really dangerous stuff really close to the tops of people's heads, and it's just terrifying. So anyway, that's another. I think that's a whole other aspect, but I think we'll see more and more of the industry growing and learning as well, which we're excited about.
I would imagine in your particular industry, Brian, you're probably more focused on what, duration and heavy lift, payload, that kind of thing?
Depends. Yeah, so some of our aircraft that are more for surveillance, security, right, search and rescue in a lot of cases, investigative work for law enforcement or firefighters or first responders in general, are really about being small, quick to launch, and capable of flying in pretty much any kind of elements, right, especially in search and rescue. You might have weather, you know, systems after a storm that manned aviation won't fly in, and we can get a tiny 20-inch quadcopter up in the air in 40-mile-an-hour winds, you know, that can stand the rain and that sideways, upside-down rain stuff that we get in Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. You know, so that's one of the games. And then other parts of our application, like this industrial crop sprayer that we have, is a big bird, right? So it is all about duration, right? Stability to carry a swinging or shifting payload when you've got liquid in a tank doing this, right? Be a pesticide or herbicide or insecticide or whatever it is. So there's a lot that goes into those. It's also your fit and finish. It's something that can handle the elements, not only with the weather and the rain and the wind and all that stuff, but also something that can sit out in the field with you in an agriculture environment and get dusty and muddy and dirty and be thrown in the back of a truck and won't fall apart. It's not plastic. And when you do crash it, not if, but when you do,
and when you crash it,
and something that can be reassembled, right? Put back together, right? That's a big differentiator in the products that we sell versus a lot of the hobby grade stuff out there. That when you let one of those smaller aircraft down, in any case, you're buying a whole new aircraft. Where ours, you might be replacing a propeller or might have to replace an ESC or something to that effect, right? Or landing gear most of the time, but you're not buying a brand new aircraft. Yeah. You're also looking at things like encrypted communications for a lot of SAR work or official law enforcement or first responder work, right? Are your comms, your live video feeds, are those encrypted, right? Or is the local news channel going to jump in and watch whatever you're doing, and broadcast it to the world? There's a ton of different things, I think, that really distinguish that hobby sector versus industrial and further distinguish military stuff. So, but it's fascinating. I could talk all day long about it, too. So, hey,
well, we'll on
that note, we'll save that for another one. I was going to say, why don't you two, we're going to do this at the end of our podcast, and our broadcast, see it. That was a good save, kind of. Except for I got so excited about it that I kind of made it too obvious. But anyway, why don't you two share a little bit about where you are and where your home is, and maybe not like your address, but like where's home for you? What's your turf? What do you like to do? What are you out doing? I mentioned home is Portland, Oregon for me. I travel all the time, and I love it, which is great. Been home 6 days in the month of January, but it's a pretty busy season for us, so that will maybe calm down, probably not, but anyway. And I'm calling in now from Florida, as I mentioned earlier, and next stop will be Los Angeles, and then Seattle, and then Jamaica, and I think back to Florida. So anyway, and then I'll be home at Portland at some point in between there. All right, next up.
Go ahead, Christina.
Oh, so I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm actually in Arlington. I'm one metro stop out from FAA headquarters because I used to work at the FAA, so obviously I live close to them. But how I know Jim Bowers a little bit is I noticed on Facebook that he's from my quasi-hometown. So out there, we're in Colfax, California, where Jim is at. I went to high school out there, go Falcons, and I lived up close to where Jim lives now. I lived up in Alta, California. But now I live in D.C., which is also known as the 30-mile no-fly zone.
I'm looking for a picture of my daughter in her cheer outfit. I'm Jim Bowers, and I live, like Christina said, I live here in Colfax, California. It's kind of halfway between Sacramento and Reno, up in the mountains. So we're at about 3,000 feet. We get 4 or 5 good snows a year, so it's right at that perfect elevation. And I'm a full-time artist. I've always been an artist, entertainer / producer, you name it. I've put on festivals. I did Burning Man for 18 years in a row, and built some very, very large art for the Burning Man organization under grants and that sort of thing. I stopped going to Burning Man 3 years ago because I couldn't outdo myself anymore. I built the world's largest clock for the Guinness Book of World Records at 1.25 miles in diameter, and it made it into the Guinness Book. But from that moment that we burned the clock to the ground, I knew I was done. So on to bigger and better things. And that was 3 years ago where I really started getting into drones. So it's just a new chapter. Yep, I do the Swarm Network and my Demon Seed channel, and entertain those guys and try to teach them a little bit of something about safety and mechanics and drones and all that, and fly responsibly. Put your name and phone number on your frickin' drone, you chicken shit.
Yeah. So once again, you know, it goes kind of like
It's
outside of the
family
social
show.
media is, yeah, if you're gonna fly it, own it, right? You own up to it
Right.
if you're doing it. Which
Yeah.
we could talk about the gentleman real quickly. The drone drops from sky at the Clement Farmers Market.
Farmers Market.
The unmanned aircraft guy crashed there in Florida. I'm sorry, in San Francisco at the farmers market, and then was upset when people took his picture as he was walking away. So you know, don't be a jerk. Own it. You're an unmanned aircraft. Own it. So real quick, so you can follow Jim Bowers at sardrones.org. You're Demon Seed on YouTube. You're the director of the Swarm Network. Where else can they find you, Jim?
Oh goodness. Well, if anybody wants to contact me, just shoot me an email.
Real quick, when I say follow, I don't mean stalk.
No, I don't have any stalkers that I know of. I got some real close friends. I'd put it that way. I get a phone call from a few people. I put my phone number. I went on a rage one time and I stuck my phone number in the video. Well, now it's out there, so there's no taking it back. But if anybody wants to reach me, just Demon Seed, and it's demon with a U, demonseed @gmail.com. And I'm always an open book. If there's something you're stuck on, or you know your phantom is not lifting up off the ground, if I can't answer it for you, I know who can. So reach out anytime.
Perfect. Brian, where can we find you?
Yes, so email address is bsanders, that's B for Brian, and then SANDERS at hse-uav like Victor.com. Also online, of course, at hse-uav.com, or like 21 other websites that we also manage and own. But that'll be the easiest one. Phone number for our company is 309-361-7656. And we're on Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff too, under most of the time just hse-uav. And yeah, best way to contact me.
Perfect. And as you can see, my beer was gone, which means that we're going to wrap this session up. So you can find us in this podcast usually at DroneSpace1 at DroneSpace1 on Twitter. You can find me on at UA Solutions Group, www.uasolutionsgroup.com. You can get in touch with me that way. And my Twitter handle is at Missing Wyoming. That's MISSENGHWYOMING. And we're going to sign off. You're listening to SHAIRed Space. That's SHAIRED SPACE with our guest today, Jim Bowers. Thank you.
And I've got one